Hey, look at that. It's Will Middlebrooks. It's me. It's not Tom Caron. Tom Caron's on secret assignment somewhere in advance of the playoffs. So we are back on 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years. Will, great to see you. How you doing?
Hey, you too, man. And what's weird, Alex, I'm not in Boston in a hotel. I'm not on the road with the team in Sacramento. I'm here in Florida for a couple series, so I get to see my family and kind of get things in order before I head back to the Yankee series.
That sounds like a novelty. I welcome it. I am happily wearing a hoodie because I just flew back on a red eye from Arizona, where I was in Chase Field
Yeah.
over the weekend, back to Boston, and the temperature dropped a little bit between those two places.
It would have been a much better story had I said, no, I had Hotel Commonwealth invest in a couple jerseys and hang them up in my hotel room.
Yes, they actually designed the Middlebrook suite at Hotel
Yeah,
Commonwealth. So
yeah,
it's
that
yeah,
a lot of high sells for that. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. It includes not only your jerseys but also X-rays of your ankle from
They
after.
actually pay
Yeah,
people to stay there, Alex. Yeah.
I would. Our family would. I assure you that my family would think that it was that it was one of their great life experiences to be in the Middlebrook suite. But speaking of Middlebrooks experiences, what a segue! The Red Sox are in Sacramento. I have never been to Sacramento. You have been. What's it like to play in Sacramento?
Yeah, so a couple years through my later in my career when I was in the PCL, definitely went through the Fresno, Sacramento, that whole Reno, Vegas, all that in that league, and it's a fun little city. But the stadium definitely now they have fixed it up a bit. They replaced the lights, which are brighter, which I think that's the biggest thing from big leagues to
Right.
minor league. And a lot of these older stadiums is the lights aren't as good. They don't have the really nice LED lights. Most teams now have replaced them. I know Sacramento did it, especially when they knew this was going to happen with the A's coming to town and big league games taking place at the field. But the locker rooms are still in left center, so not connected to the dugout. So you'll if a guy gets tossed from the game, he'll have the walk of shame all the way to left center where he has to leave. The ball does fly there. I'll tell you that. When I played there, I mentioned the lights. It was hard to see. That's not the case anymore. But the ball, you hit it hard in the air, it tends to fly.
It's kind of an incredible contrast to Oakland, right? Where like at night you could just absolutely clean out a ball and it was still going to die probably in front of the warning track. So it's a pretty
Hey,
and you're seeing some of the A's players like really take advantage of that.
totally. And this is irrelevant, but my last career home run, big league home run, was in Oakland at night to dead center. By the way,
Wow.
Fernando Ibad. That's
Oh man. Oh,
yeah.
was it against a 62-mile-an-hour curveball or
No, it was
what was
a
he doing?
fastball. It was a fastball, and we were down by like 7 in the 8th, but it was my last big league homer, and it was at night at Oakland, so I was pretty proud of that one. To your point.
Yeah, rightly so. I mean, you had juice. Actually, it was funny. Like when I was in Chase Field this weekend, I texted you a picture of the All-Star Futures game logo from 2011 because I had covered you there,
Yeah.
and it was cool to get to see you
The
shooting
ball
me.
doesn't fly there like it used to. Whether the
No,
regulations with the humidor, the baseballs, whatever. I mean, so many balls you saw hit this series from the Red Sox caught on the track. Obviously, some robbed homers by both teams, but so many hard hit balls to deep parts and then the gaps that you think off the bat are gone, and they didn't leave. It's not the same place as it used to be. It used to be a launching pad.
yeah, yeah. You actually saw that with Trevor Story thinking that he had gotten a hold of one, and
Bregman,
and like
yeah,
Trevor's gifted as a bat flipper, but probably felt a little bit squeamish after flipping a bat and seeing the ball bang off of the fence in left center for a double. But Will, you actually you actually brought up something that focuses on something that's certainly on my mind. The Red Sox did not hit a single home run in the series in Chase Field. In fact, in 4 games, as we talk on Monday morning, in 4 games since Roman Anthony's injury, they have 0 home runs. Where's the lineup at right now?
you know. I'm not going to panic and say this is all because of Roman Anthony, because Roman Anthony didn't give up 10 runs. Roman Anthony doesn't go out and pitch a shutout. This team will forever be successful based on how they pitch, and a lot of that
Hmm.
starts with their starting pitching. So I think a lot of that was the biggest issue. You could argue, say the vibes were down, right, and the maybe the locker room felt different because they lost a big piece of their team and their leadoff hitter, and he'd been so good. I mean, he's hitting over 330 with an OPS of like 930 since he moved to the leadoff spot 35 games ago, or however long that was. So it changes the dynamic of the lineup a bit. I know they like Duran further down the lineup, mainly so he can be more aggressive, which is the hitter he is, swing early in counts if he gets his pitch. When he's a leadoff hitter, he sometimes tends to get passive just because he feels like he needs to see pitches for the guys later in the lineup there in that first inning. And that's really not his game. So that affects that, but he's going to have to step up and figure it out, and he's going to be the guy leading off against righties until hopefully they get Roman back or early October if they're lucky. That's pretty optimistic, but you really got to get Bregman going. You got to get Cedon going again, whatever's been going on with him over the last 50 games since the break. Story's been really consistent. Romy's been really consistent. I think Romy's been a pretty big surprise this year. You knew he was going to be a role player. You knew he was going to crush lefties. You did not expect him to be this good every day. And defensively, he's been much better as well, both first and second. So they're going well, but Yoshida's got to get going, and this all starts with Bregman for me. It does. He is the guy. He's the sock in the middle of that lineup, and he's gone through this really cold streak. He has had a lot of hard hit balls over the last 2 weeks that haven't fallen, but there've also been a lot of weak ground outs and him taking fastballs right down the middle. So he's clearly feeling a little off with his timing and his approach right now.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one, right? Like we have AC kind of playing spin the bottle on the leadoff spot, which is really weird. One day he declares, Duran is probably going to be the leadoff guy moving forward for the rest of the season, certainly against righties. And then next two games, here's Masataka Yoshida leading off. So that was a little bit surprising, but probably for exactly the reason that you're talking about, looking to Duran as a possible run producer. And I will say that like Duran, just in terms of like how loud the contact was in Arizona, he was the guy who most consistently was squaring balls up. Now, that's not necessarily a high standard because there weren't a lot of guys who were doing it on a consistent basis, save perhaps for Story, who, as you rightly point out, is managing to drive the ball with some consistency. But yeah, like Bregman, it was startling, like to see. The home run was robbed by a spectacular play by Blaze Alexander in the Saturday game. So that was a really good sign for Alex Bregman. Not that it was caught, but instead that he got into a ball, pull side air, and drove it. But I think you're absolutely right. Like until he had a multi-run hit during the course of this season, during the course of this series, for the first time in like a month. And Alex Bregman, shouldn't be hitting this many ground balls. I do think that we take for granted once he's back in the lineup, like having recovered from that quad injury, that, it's like, oh, he's healthy again. Well, probably not. He rushed back from that injury. He worked to get back fast. And it didn't show up initially, which is a credit to him figuring out how to make some adjustments. But it was a major injury, and it was probably going to show up in some respect, probably in mechanical consistency.
And I would rather, and we can get into this a little bit more later in the show when we start talking about the playoff race and the wild card chase and all that. This is a streaky team. They have been all year. They do this every month where they go silent for a week or maybe more, and then they get hot again. This has been the ups and downs of the 2025 Boston Red Sox, and it's really their identity. They're really hot or they're really cold. There's not a lot of in-between gray area with this team. I would rather them be cold right now while they have that luxury of this massive void, or not void, but the teams behind them in the wild card chase having to go, let's see, 18-6 or something over their last whatever games. I just looked at it a few days ago, so I'm a couple behind.
Yeah.
It was like 17-5 or something like that over the last 22, Texas or another team to have to catch Seattle or to catch us. So I'm not okay with them not playing well. Obviously, I want them to play well, but if they're going to be cold now, based off of what we've seen them all season, they're going to get hot again, and it's going to be the last 2 weeks of September going into October, which is literally the perfect time.
It is interesting to think about how the hot and cold is running right now. And part of that is, they had great consistency in the rotation for a long time this season, right? And they were rolling out the same 5 guys. I realized that like Walker Buehler struggled in his role. Nonetheless, like he was giving them even in his last 7 starts, I think, before he got demoted to the bullpen and then subsequently released, he had a sub-4 ERA and was averaging more than 5 innings a start. So they made a kind of like roll of the dice for upside because Buehler wasn't striking guys out. They were looking for, they're looking for where can we get swing and miss weapons back into the rotation. So now all of a sudden they have Payton Tolle, who's, had an incredible year, but does not have but you don't quite know exactly how this is going to play out at the major league level, particularly given that he's not exactly built out to be
when he's maxed out his innings too. That's
right.
The thing is he's never pitched more than 85 innings in a season before this year, and now he's over 100. So
right.
That's what you look at the body type, you look at the workload management, which the Red Sox organization is so good with their prospect arms. But that's the one worry. It's not the stuff. It's at what point does he run out of gas and it doesn't turn into outs like what you saw in Arizona of him. That pitch, it's always command first. It's not velocity. And all of a sudden that fastball up is fastball middle, and all of a sudden it's hittable, which we saw. So that's a worry of mine. I'm not expecting him to make any massive starts in the postseason unless he does have to pitch a game 4. And I think they would possibly lean him instead of Dustin May at this point. We'll have to see how the last 2 weeks go, obviously.
Yeah, well, right. In that we're still in an exploratory process,
it's
right?
Still a tryout phase for those 2 guys, honestly.
And maybe more, right? Like there's a chance that we're going to see a guy like a Connolly early up in the big leagues at some point. It may be Wednesday, maybe later in the month. There are things that can still change, which again, that gets to an interesting change in the dynamics of the rotation. Alex Cora talked about the fact that this rotation where it had been a stable, like these were our 5 guys, we're going to let it roll in some order, and the identity of the 5th guy, whether it was Dustin May or whether it was prior to that Richard Fitz or whether it was Hunter Dobbins, that's shifted at times, but they had been able to stay on turn, and that's no longer necessarily the case 5 times through. Here's Alex Cora talking about the shifting state of the pitching staff.
We decided yet when Payton was is he out for Wednesday? Is he still a factor for Wednesday?
Probably he's out for. I mean, he's not starting. Probably doesn't start on Wednesday. He could be part of it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Is that just kind of wait and see how you get through the first 2 games of that series?
There's a lot of things going on right now, so we just have to wait and see.
I mean, you had been on there hadn't been openers all year, right? Like it had been consistent 5. How different is this stretch?
Very different, and something we decide to do right as a group, and we have to deal with it, and we'll be fine. Obviously, usage comes into play, his situation comes into play. There's a lot of different scenarios that can happen, especially in that series. So we just have to be patient and see how we finish today, where we at bullpen wise, and go from there.
I mean, when you define the difference, right? Like, is it like really kind of day to day that you're taking inventory of who's going where? How far out are you able to to kind of plan and think through pitching plans?
We can go as far as like the Sacramento series at home, and then we can make decisions on the fly for the Sacramento series on the road. So that's where we at right now. It's September, and it's a different roster than 2 weeks ago. It's a different situation than 3 weeks ago, starting rotation-wise, when we decided to move on from Walker in that aspect, right, and moving to the bullpen. So now we just have to, just take inventory, see where we at, and make decisions.
You discussed a lot about the value of having Roman, Marcelo, and Christian for all of spring training. Obviously, Payton wasn't with you guys because he was, heading into high A. Is it a little different when you have to kind of have a crash course on a guy that you are not as familiar with?
From my end, yeah, but he seems like he fits with the group. He fitted with the group very easy. He's a good guy, and obviously this is different than what he went through in the minor leagues. But he's a good pitcher. He's a guy that we believe in, and we'll make it work.
How many times have you met him before his debut?
I think last year when he signed.
Because Payton is a starter with a starter's regimen, do you have to tell him at any certain point going into Wednesday or in the lead up to Wednesday, like, hey, we're going to use you or we're not going to use you? or do you have to decide?
Oh yeah, I mean obviously there's a plan in place, and communication is a must. Not only with him but with everybody else. Whenever we make the decision, we'll talk to him and we go from there.
3:10 to left is presented by your New England Ford dealers who've been taking everyone out to the ball game at Fenway Park for decades. Catch Ford next time you're at Fenway, including in the Ford Clubhouse, a full-service bar perfect for bringing your lineup together and for recording our live edition of 3:10 to left. It's all brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling trucks for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox.
So obviously we're dealing with a different set of circumstances with the rotation. Will, what's your perspective? How do you think we got here?
I mean, injuries. Injuries are how we got to where we're trying to figure out the back end of this rotation, where it's obviously it's important to have extra options once you get to October. But how many times are the fourth and fifth spots in this rotation going to come up in big games in which you need them when you are trying to get that top wildcard spot, or even if you are just trying to hold on to a playoff spot? We don't know what the next 2 weeks hold. And you can't lean on your top three guys just because they can't pitch every 3 days. That's just not how it works. So you're going to have important games come up where you're looking at this injury list of this season. It's Cutter Crawford, Hunter Dobbins, Richard Fitz, Tanner Houck, never got Patrick Sandoval back. Even a Josh Winkowski who maybe could give you innings. Cooper Criswell, who knows? So there's all this depth that you had accrued and started the season with. Even to the fact that you were able to trade a Quinn Priester to the Milwaukee Brewers early this season after spring training when he didn't make the team. And now you're looking back thinking, man, if we just had one of those guys, everything would feel completely different right now. So it's a tough spot to be in, but this team's still in a good place, right? Where you do still have 3 staples that you were pretty much put up against anybody at this point in the season. I think we can all agree on that with our top 3. With Crochet, Bayo, and Giolito. So as this shakes out, whether there's bullpen days mixed in, which could be interesting just because innings are getting high for a lot of these guys, appearances are getting high, arms are kind of hanging on by a thread once you get to this point. And then you get to October and it's all adrenaline based and everything almost feels like it starts over for a player physically and mentally. So you just kind of got to get to the finish line and solidify a number 4 and then a long guy in the bullpen for the postseason is what it feels like.
Yeah, but it is, you bring up a lot of really interesting points, whether it be attrition and the pitchers who are lost, whether it be the Red Sox having traded away Quinn Priester at a time when the Brewers were facing potential catastrophe in their rotation, right? So they're desperately dialing teams and teams for available starters. And the Red Sox were that team with Priester. And of course, if they had him to be able to fill in where their injuries ended up stacking up on top of each other, this might be a very different conversation about how the team was rolling through September. So the dynamics, though, of managing the roster in September are different. There's roster expansion, which is way more limited than it used to be. It used to be, when you had 40 guys, then if you were behind, then you just had a bunch. You were able to reset the pitching staff. Yeah. And now you're able to expand the roster to 14 pitchers from 13 for the rest of the season. So it's like you can Chris Murphy and Zach Kelly made big impacts with being able to assume multi-inning workloads in games where the Red Sox were trailing. But but then you have some major roster decisions right after that of oh shoot, do we now have to go summon someone else from AAA? It's a way more day-to-day dynamic.
65 pitches. And that was right before the road trip out to Arizona, and I'm thinking they got to make a move, right? Because he's not going to be available for 3 days. But they did have Murphy; they made that move, obviously, and some other guys, Matz, who's been actually really good. I don't know how much time we have, but I love talking about this bullpen because it's interesting for me because you have this lockdown of Whitlock and Aroldis, obviously, which. Since the end of May, they've given up 1 run between them. It's absolutely absurd what they're doing. But obviously, those guys can't throw every night. Wilson's another guy I absolutely love. And I think Alex is, since about the midway point in the season, he started really just trying to find left-handed pockets for him. The numbers are much better. Yep. 194 against lefties, 310 against righties. The fastball plays against both, but righties have a much better success rate. I need to have more confidence in Weissert. Right, I feel, and this isn't a stuff thing. It's not ability thing, he's just kind of been run down on the ground. He's at 65 appearances right now. So I think the kicker for all of this is Justin Slayton. And if he can get back to who he was pre-injury, then you have two legit setup guys, which is great. It's great in October, but it's also great at this point in the season where you have some guys, your main guys who've thrown a lot. And obviously Slayton missed a lot of time with his injury. So he's, I don't want to say fresh, but he definitely, his arm is feeling a lot better than a lot of these other guys. So you're going to expect to hopefully see him in big leverage situations. But let's not forget about the Steven Matz and the Bernardinos and guys like that who can get both lefties and righties out. I think they're going to maybe not just see fifth, sixth inning appearances. Maybe we start seeing those guys later in games just to give some of those main arms a breather.
We are seeing, in the same way that we're seeing Alex Cora, though, experimenting in the leadoff spot, we are also seeing it in the setup roles. Sunday was a great example of it, where all of a sudden, the Red Sox finally get a lead. I believe it was the first time they had led since Roman Anthony's injury, not to belabor the point, or at least in the games since Roman Anthony had been out. They obviously won the game in which he was actually injured, but finally get a lead, right? And they've been dormant forever. And who's coming out in the seventh inning with a one-run lead? It is Zach Kelly, whose previous appearance had been that aforementioned 4-inning, 65-pitch thing. And this is a leverage kind of short relief spot in order to bridge it to Whitlock and to Chapman, and it didn't end up going well, right? Kelly, there was a kind of Bermuda Triangle swinging bunt that occurred in order to kick off a rally, and then all of a sudden there's a walk that's kicked in, and then very quickly you end up in a situation where game is tied, and all of a sudden here comes Garrett Whitlock for a 5-inning a 5-out appearance, which is not what the Red Sox are looking to do right now, but what they had to do. And one thing that is notable that we need to keep an eye on, Whitlock looks like he's physically laboring through this part of the season. I talked to him on Friday about this. He was like, I am so pumped and committed to the idea of making it through my first major league season without landing on the injured list, that they will have to I'm taking it out. I will pitch through anything, but he's laboring.
He had the hip issue, right? And then he covered first base in either game 2 or game 3 it was game 3 of the Arizona series, and I got nervous because he almost limped, and he always has that his gait, the way he walks is almost like a permanent limp anyways, but he was real slow getting off the bag there, and it got my attention, but he was totally fine. But it still scared me just to even think about losing someone like that at this point in the season would really hurt you. So yes, they do.
I don't think he's totally fine. I think that it's actually not that. I actually don't think there's a hip thing. I think that there's a right lower leg thing that is happening. I kind of asked him about it, and he said we're not going to go into that. But
gotcha.
but
at this point in the season, no one's
still pitching. Yeah.
So, but this is a guy they need to deploy in a smart fashion, because if you're going anywhere, it's going to be that back end of the bullpen in that 7th and 8th inning. And as you know, in the postseason, these guys are deployed in the 5th, 6th. It's not always late in the game. It's whenever the meat of the lineup is up and
the highest leverage moment of the game. If there's a game-changing moment,
your main guys are ready to go, and hopefully they're in a spot the last 3-4 days of the season where they can kind of let off the gas a little bit. But it's all about seeding, so we'll see.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that everyone is dealing with something at this time of year. That is probably true of Aroldis Chapman, even though he appears to be invincible right now. What he's doing right now is insane. He had the 4-strikeout inning, the first of his career, which is it's kind of wild that there's a guy where you're like, oh, I'm surprised that that's his first 4-strikeout inning of his career. What? But
he should do it more often. It's almost like Angel Reese of closers, where you just get your own rebound. And just pad your stats.
What Chapman is doing is unbelievable. We actually talked after the game on Sunday, after that 4-strikeout game, with Garrett Whitlock about what we're seeing from Aroldis Chapman.
What's it like to watch Chapman on this run?
Magical. I mean, honestly, it's one of those things where it's fun to be down there with him, just because it's again, he's an amazing guy, and it's even more fun to watch when he's coming in. And me and Dave Miller were sitting in here during the 9th, and Dave was pacing around. I was like, sit down, dude, you're stressing me out. I was like, it's Chappie, it's fine.
You've had a lot of relievers like are all just towards the back end of their career, but still really effective. What kind of things have you picked up from some of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I love picking their brain. I mean, I've been fortunate enough with him and Ottavino and Brandon Workman, you know, a bunch of guys, Kinley. So it's been special to be able to be around such a talented reliever group. And, you know, with him, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is, you know, what it takes to upkeep your body each and every day. I mean, just to see the due diligence that he has, the routine that he has, that's the word I was thinking of. Like just that kind of stuff that he does every single day. It's really impressive, and it's an honor to get to watch.
Back on 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers. Will, you heard Garrett Whitlock talking about the security blanket of having Chapman. Really, the combination of them has offered the Red Sox a pretty considerable security blanket.
Yeah, and look, I know you are the stats masters, but I have a stat for you. All right,
Ooh.
So Aroldis Chapman and Garrett Whitlock have appeared in the same game 27 times since May 17th. They've allowed one run, Alex. That's 51 in the third innings pitch, one earned run, ERA of 0.18, a whip of 0.66. So the Red Sox are 22-5, and those 5 losses are all in extra innings. So when these guys are going, they're winning. It's unbelievable. That amount of coverage, over 51 innings, just one run. And yes, hats off to Chapman and what he's done in his career to prolong his success with his body, physically, what we've seen him cut his walk rate in half. But with Garrett Whitlock, what he's dealt with injuries and having to go back and forth between the rotation and the pen, trying to figure out who the heck he is as a major league pitcher, for both of these guys to have the season they're having this year has just been unbelievable.
Yeah, and particularly with Whitlock having to rediscover his mechanics and just find his command again after missing most of last year while recovering from that surgery. It's pretty remarkable. But so the Red Sox have that. That is right now kind of their pillar, one of their cornerstone of stability. If they have a lead through 7 innings, they have a pretty good chance of getting a win. But they're still putting together the pieces in a lot of ways of how to get through those leads through 7 innings, especially figuring out some things in the back of the rotation, figuring out some things in the middle relief. I talked to Eddie Romero, assistant GM Eddie Romero, about what it's like to live through team building in September when you are once again, finally, back in contention for the Red Sox. So here was my conversation with Eddie Romero about managing, about the front office working through roster management in a pennant race.
Joined in Arizona by Red Sox assistant GM Eddie Romero. Eddie, great to see you. Step back. It's September. You guys are in a position where you currently hold one of the wild card spots. How much, as someone who devotes his every day of the year to trying to build a team that's in this position, how different is it to be in this spot in September than the last couple of years?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Alex. And it's an exciting time. It's the time that we spend all off season working for. It's to play meaningful games in September, to play cold weather baseball, as I like to call it. It's there's an energy. You wake up in the morning, and if you lost the night before, you're wondering what could we have done. Where do we go wrong? If we do win, you're focusing on that night. What do we need to do to optimize the lineup and the matchups and make sure that AC and his staff have everything at their fingertips in order to give them the best chance to win the game. So, a lot of the work has been done in terms of fundamentals and from our player development staff getting guys ready, and especially going into these next 18, 19 games to go. The focus is on one thing, and that's winning. That's getting into the postseason. That's playoff positioning, and again, just be putting us in the best position to win.
What's your process when you wake up? Are you are you checking standings before you go to bed? Are you checking them in the morning? Are you checking do you look at do you have your own internal playoff odds? Stuff that you're when do you check that stuff?
Sure, no, constantly. In games, during our games, and here it's a little different on the West Coast. Because everybody's done, and you have you kind of know what's going on. But you're looking at box scores, your standings checking all the time, and so. Again, that just goes to the part of the energy. And as soon as the game ends here, we're talking oh, hey, this game, these guys gave it up, or this happened, and talking about in detail about the pain points or the prime points of our games. And so again, that just all goes to the extra kind of added energy that goes into this time of the year.
As you do you find reassurance? So as we sit here on Sunday morning, you guys are coming off of a 3-game losing streak, first one in a bit. Do you reassure yourself okay, postseason odds still look good?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned odds earlier, and yeah, we have our own internal playoffs odds. We look at the public odds, and again, we can't. We have a mini skid here. We're fine. We are still in a strong position. We just need to worry about today and playing our best today. And usually, as we've done that this year, a lot of times we've been more on the right side than on the wrong side.
It's an interesting time of year, though, right? Because as you arrive at this moment, you guys had really a lot of roster stability for quite a while there, right? Like you guys rolled out the same 5 starters for months, and then you had really good health going through them, and then reliable innings happening, and then we get to September. Like you made the decision in late August. You released Walker Buehler, first moved him to the bullpen, then ended up releasing him. You're going with kind of a high reward move with the Payton Tolle, who was incredible in the minors, but also who doesn't have necessarily, he'd only been throwing 4 or 5 innings in the minors, so you're pushing that. You're getting a couple of bullpen games here and there. Like, how different is roster management at this time of year when you have the cumulative weight of the first 5 months of the season, and you're probably taking some swings in order to find the biggest ceiling on the roster moving forward?
Sure. I mean, this is the importance and why we stress so much of having deep depth, and it's crazy how the attrition rates happen, throughout baseball. It's just not something that is unique to us. But again, it's just building that depth and preparing guys for the challenge of being here, giving them the feel. And I think our player development staff, our AAA staff has done a tremendous job in preparing some of those arms, especially, and also some position players. But you go into every season knowing that you're not going to win with 26, 28, or 40. You're going to go off the roster sometimes, and it's just preparing those guys on a daily basis to come in and produce, and we've had guys lately step in, Nate Eaton, like you mentioned, Payton come in and gave us a solid start. And I think especially this time of the year, you're just focusing so much on, lining up the AAA players in case there's something happens. Then it's all about optimizing the chance to win, giving AC, Bales the resources, and so much constant communication between us, between the minor league group, just to have those guys ready.
Are those conversations very different than they were in the last couple of years when your position in the standings was just different?
Obviously, yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to playing, meaningful games in September, but also just given the importance, given where we are, we're in a good spot. So we there's just kind of like a renewed energy and vigor to make sure that we have, if X can't go tomorrow, we have this guy lined up for it.
So, fan and media approach to all of these moments, anytime a weakness pops up, even if it's in a brief couple of game span, it's always well, they made this roster move, way back then, 3 months earlier, right? There's some obvious ones, right? Like trading Quinn Priester has been a conversation point throughout the course of the season at a time when you guys are, there have been more openers, and so it's oh, he would have been, he's been pretty good for Milwaukee, right? Or, all of a sudden your offense is struggling, and it's oh, well, you did trade Rafael Devers. Do you guys go back and have those conversations, or are you kind of more forward-looking? Do you just accept the past as as a are you a rearview mirror guy as you go through the month of September?
I think it's always effective to go back and reassess, not only the decision itself, because who knows what the results will be, but just checking your process and seeing hey, was there anywhere we something that we missed, or an area where we could have improved on. But again, at that time, we thought that was a great deal, and who knows, Quinn has had obviously an unbelievable season, but you're never going to hit 1,000 on these trades, and at the time we thought we got a really good return, and we'll see what happens, and getting the draft pick, which was huge for us. We'll see what comes out of that. But again, if you can waste a lot of time, but I do think it's important to reassess more of the process than the results.
Yeah, well, I think that it's kind of like the 3-point shooter, right? You, in order to be able to have, this is the most efficient way of winning in the NBA. You have to take some 3-pointers. You're going to miss some, right. And you guys have become a more aggressive organization, I feel in the last couple of years in terms of roster building through trades.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that Brez really has hammered with in terms of with our acquisition team on just lower, I don't want to say low hanging fruit, but really scouring all departments. And once we get in position, once we do our processes and we feel comfortable acting on those decisions in a little bit more of a decisive manner. And I think, given trades, we're just maybe scouring a little bit more than we have in the past, but just being aggressive, and it's also when you're in a position to, the farm system is better, the
right.
Major League Club is better, we're in a position to strike, and we can't be, we need to be bold in those processes and those decision making when those times come, and we have.
But getting to the current state of the rotation, right, where it is like the case that as Wednesday approaches, you guys are kind of TBA in Sacramento with the possibility of Tolle being someone who would contribute out of the bullpen that day. Some different things are happening. Are you surprised to be in the position where openers, where it's not just a matter of changing personnel in the rotation, but kind of changing rotation strategy in September? Or do you just accept that this is the reality of 162 games, particularly in an era where it's not like you ask pitchers to step off the gas pedal at any point in the season? It's like throw every pitch with as much with as much intent as possible.
I mean, every team come September would love to have 6 healthy starters,
yeah.
And that's just not the reality. The injury rates and the attrition of pitchers overall is higher than ever, and so that's why it's important to build that depth, that second layer of guys that can come up. And I tip my hat to our pitching department and overall to PD staff for enabling us to be where we are today because of that. But yeah, it's just a natural thing. Is it ideal to having to be strategized with openers at this time in September? No, but again, if that's what gives us the optimal chance to win tonight, then that's what we're going to go with. But yeah, it's just really hard to have 5 healthy guys that can give you 6 innings and 2 earned runs and go with that at this point of the season.
Well, I should also mention, you mentioned the PD group, so Tolle is up. There have been some interesting performances there. He's not alone in terms of a guy who has been impressive in AAA. Connolly Early is a guy who's drafted in 23, and he's been awfully impressive in some AAA outings. Kyle Harrison is a guy who's been discussed obviously on the 40-man roster, acquired in the Devers trade. Do you foresee the possibility that there could be other guys coming through the system who would be options to start this month?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the names you mentioned, a few other names, those are all names that we discuss on a daily basis. Again, at this point of the year when we're talking about maximizing our ability to win, the win value now in September when you're in a postseason chase is at its peak. And so we'd be remiss if we're not considering those names, that if we feel that matchup can help us win, if that can give us some length and help us not only on that day but possibly save the bullpen and going into another game. Those are all possibilities that we have to consider, and yeah, those are again discussions that are had daily.
One of the reasons why it's so interesting to have a conversation about having young pitchers debut, especially in September, is that there is a different feeling about playing in these high intensity games, right? The environment. Love Polar Park. Great place to see a baseball game. The feeling that you get walking onto the mound in an International League game is a little bit different than it is walking onto the field in Chase Field or Sacramento or Fenway Park in the middle of a pennant race. But that's also true of guys who have been part of the organization, who have been part of the big league roster for a little bit. For you, as someone who has seen, for instance, Brian Bayo, dating back to when he was working on the show, trying to find a professional opportunity back a decade ago in the Dominican Republic. How interesting is it for you to be able to take stock of this kind of moment of career growth where it's okay, Brian Bayo, September has rolled around with games of consequence. Let's see what you got.
Well, to go to your first point about the Fenway experience, I mean, the first thing I think about is Payton Tolle talking about how he couldn't feel his feet, going on the mound, and how he was so excited. And he came back into the dugout screaming that at Wong. He's like, "Wow, I can't feel my body," and that's part of it. That's part of the beauty, the intensity, the adrenaline of a big moment of playing September baseball at Fenway Park in a pennant run. But yeah, as an organization, I think that it's a special feeling when you have homegrown players. Who are critical to team success and have played an important role throughout the year. And when we get to these big games, the Brian Bayos, the Rafaelas of the world, those are turning into impact players for us, guys that have had a big part of the reason that we are where we are right now in the chase. And so it's fun, it's exciting, it's rewarding. It's very cool for the Dominican area scout that recommended him just as much as for Justin Willard in the pitching department and our pitching staff who helped refine some things with Brian going into the season, to the medical staff that made sure that he that has put him in a position to be as durable as he's been. And so those are things that kind of go unseen and unsaid, but it's a really neat feeling to see those guys producing when the games mean so much.
So at this time of year, when you are T-minus a few weeks left in the season, how much time do you allow yourself to kind of remember what that feeling of October baseball is like in Fenway Park, or are you so locked into just like the day-to-day, day-to-day survival of September that you're trying to tune that out?
Yeah, it's not one to get ahead of ourselves,
No.
I mean, we have 3 weeks to go, so let's it's kind of tunnel vision right now, and then we can find time to celebrate if and when that happens. But I'm not one to think like that. I want to stay in the present, make sure we're focused on the short-term future, and then if and when those things happen, we can enjoy that then.
Very good.
Yeah.
Eddie, thanks so much. Great to see you.
Great. Thanks for having me.
310 to Left is presented by your New England Ford dealers who've been taking everyone out to the ball game at Fenway Park for decades. Catch Ford next time you're at Fenway, including in the Ford Clubhouse, a full-service bar perfect for bringing your lineup together and for recording our live edition of 310 to Left. It's all brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling trucks for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox.
So that's Eddie Romero talking about where the Red Sox are at, both in terms of once again playing meaningful games in September with something in front of them, but also that those last lengths before the finish, leading up to the finish line, they can be tough parts of the race. But there's you have a little bit extra behind you when the postseason is maybe in sight. Well, as we sit here, the Red Sox have a pretty decent cushion, handful of games on any team that's currently on the outside looking in at the wild card race. How strange has this American League field been to watch over the, from about mid-August through now?
It has been, and you hear the word weak, I guess, but like I don't necessarily look at it as weak. I just feel like the talent is a little more spaced out, and there's more teams and that are more middle ground. I feel like in the National League, there's a few terrible teams, and then there's the top echelon of what's been going on. But obviously, at the top with Toronto and Detroit doing what they're doing, but they're not far off from where us and where the Red Sox and the Yankees are. But looking at the wild card, I feel really confident that the Red Sox are going to be in a wild card spot with the padding they have, 3.5 up. Texas Rangers and the Royals, kind of the ones on the outside that you feel like could have a chance. They would have to play really good baseball to get to this point. And at this point in the season, not only are you looking at the standings and following that every day, you're looking at remaining schedules. What do these teams have left? And out of the 30 teams, the Red Sox have the 6th toughest remaining schedule. Obviously, the 3 versus the Yankees coming up, the Blue Jays series, and then the Tigers to end the season. But you do have 6 versus the A's and 3 versus Tampa Bay, who's actually been playing pretty good baseball. Yeah. Shocking to no one, Alex, the New York Yankees have the 26th toughest schedule, which always lines up. You'll love to do that. Don't get me going on that. And then Toronto's about middle of the pack, 12th. So the Red Sox are going to have to earn this, which they have all year. But you feel like they have to take care of business against Oakland. Or can't call them that. Oaklamento, we'll go with. Oaklamento. That makes me want a sandwich, Oaklamento sandwich. Ooh. But yeah,
little pimento.
You got to stack wins against bad teams, and it's these teams that are playing for nothing that are really tough to play in September when you have everything on the line, and they're just young kids out there trying to play for a job next year. Mm-hmm. And so that's a little scary playing those teams. You hope that when Detroit gets here, they've got a little more security, and maybe you don't see Skubal, but I have a feeling we're probably going to run into him, even though we put 5 on him early in the year.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, right. But it might be a really short start, right? Like a kind of like touch and feel start where, he gets the first game of the series and then they roll out the bullpen. But it's a strange time of year. You talked about the Red Sox being streaky and that being their identity. That's the entire American League, and that's why this is such a strange season. This is kind of this is the context where you can see this is not a hard year for it to repeat the 2023 Diamondbacks Rangers World Series, where it's a 5 seed versus a 6 series, because the talent is pretty flat across baseball. And you mentioned the National League, even the NL, people are talking widely about the fact that like none of those teams are really able to catch their stride. The Dodgers are falling back. The Padres are dealing with a bunch of injuries.
Less wins than Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah. And the Brewers are starting to struggle as well. So it is across baseball. They're like, this is not a year of great teams. And within that, like, there's an opportunity for, things can flip very quickly. That's the Red Sox. This has not been a great stretch for the Red Sox.
Do you think this has to do with the more balanced schedule? And that you're playing, equally the amount of talent, essentially?
That's a really great question that I haven't given enough thought to. I don't know. I feel like the teams that should have been the superpowers this year were too injured to be able to achieve that, right? Like the Dodgers and the Padres were the two teams where it looked like, okay, this is like old school Red Sox Yankees type dynamics where they're just like loading up on every top available talent.
And their rotation was
bang,
decimated
bang.
every time they played.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're both right. Their rotation's both a mess throughout most of the year, right? Like the Dodgers of all teams have been running out a bunch of bullpen games this year. What? So I think that the teams that could have been really, really good ended up being held back from that.
I love that because there's no clear favorite in the postseason, and as a fan of the game, and as someone that works for a team that's probably a wild card team, that's great because you just need a chip and a chair and be hot at the right time. Seriously, that's all it is. You just need to be hot but that's the most postseason most years. Who's hot at that exact time where everything's clicking and you can beat anyone? And you just never really know. Now, for sports gamblers, they're going to have no idea who's going to win this thing. But as a fan of the game, you have to love it.
Yeah, well, I think that we'll focus more on the fan of the game side of things for right now. But it's a wild and wide open baseball landscape as we enter the final couple weeks of the season. So, Will, this has been great. Always a blast to catch up with always great to get the perspective and also to see the Japanese characters that you will one day have translated for you. We think maybe
it relates. If it does anything inappropriate.
We presume it's related to Masataka Yoshida, but for Will Middlebrooks, I'm Alex Speier. Thank you so much for watching 310 to Left. We'll see you soon.